I know that this video will make it that I've talked about Bo Burnham's Inside consecutively for 3 videos in some capacity, and the special itself is almost completely out of the cultural zeitgeist, but this is my channel, so you get to watch what I create. So here are some things that Bo Burnham did in Inside, which I think are just really cool. And also, if you haven't watched this special, it's on Netflix, go watch it, have several existential crises, then come back here and enjoy this video. Thank you. Hello there. Burnham's use of aspect ratios isn't that groundbreaking, but it serves the themes of what he's portraying, and I'm almost 100% sure that other comedy specials, or even most movies for that matter, really don't worry about aspect ratios that much. So it's refreshing to see a filmic product play in this area. For example, in his song FaceTiming with My Mum, the normal 16:9 aspect ratio squeezes in and leaves a sliver in the middle of the screen that resembles the aspect ratio of a phone. Not only is it a visual nod to how smartphones look, but it's a smarter way to illustrate the experience of a FaceTime call. Most films would add like a weird overlay of a computer screen to visually depict it. Burnham has been vocal about this before and strives for technology to be tangible within a film world. His film 8th Grade does this perfectly. Naturally, Burnham carries over that style to Inside, making the aspect ratio a kind of visual shorthand that isn't as intrusive as other methods. It just feels a lot more clean and ultimately gets the point across easier. A more common use of aspect ratio is used in Problematic. The whole section uses low-key lighting to create dramatic shadows and harsh light to evoke a more cinematic look, and the aspect ratio reflects that. It's closer to a 2.35:1 aspect ratio that a lot of commercial films use, thus adding to the cinematic look. Hell, even I did it on a music video I made a while back. Just around the corner, I'm just... What? It's an extremely easy way to make normal footage look cinematic. This use of aspect ratio just pushes an already cinematic scene to the next level. The last use of different aspect ratio in Inside is found in White Woman's Instagram, and it might just be my favorite use of aspect ratio in that I've seen for a while. I think every video essayist talking about Inside has talked about this, but here we go. Almost the whole song is in a 1:1 aspect ratio, which is obviously meant to reflect Instagram and how photos are viewed on that platform. But the interesting part comes in about halfway through the song when Burnham's White Woman character is talking about a caption that they've written about their mother who had recently died, and the aspect ratio slowly expands to reflect the character having a genuine moment, dropping the Instagram facade that Burnham has set up throughout the song. But as soon as the post turns back to tropes, the aspect ratio slowly closes in again, as if being consumed by the platform's aesthetic and artifice, leaving that genuineness behind. Again, it's just a subtle way to enhance the themes that Burnham explores in this song. It's just good filmmaking. Cool, that's a tape. Shit. If you don't know what a musical motif is, it's a recurring piece of music that relates to a feeling, phrase, or person in an artistic work. It can be anything from lyrics, a melody, or a chord progression. As long as it relates to one of these things in a piece of art, it's a motif. In some cases, they could be quite subjective to an audience member, but when used, it can create really emotional moments. Musical theatre uses motifs often in this way, and Burnham takes inspiration from theatre a ton. So it makes sense that motifs will be sprinkled throughout the special. One that you probably notice straight away as a part of the melody from comedy is found again in the brand ambassador bit. More specifically, the Healing the World with Comedy melody comes back in an orchestral arrangement in the background of the bit. Healing the world with comedy.
Do you want to buy Wheat Thins, for example? The question is now, will you support Wheat Thins?
I believe Burnham chose to have this motif play because both the song and this sketch deal with how an entity portrays themselves for an audience, and the disconnect that comes with that. The song Comedy touches on how comedians think they're doing a public service by releasing comedy, when in reality it ultimately does nothing but serve their image. The bit illustrates companies doing the same thing by commercializing political takes with their products, just to be perceived as doing the right thing. The musical motif serves as a more tangible connection between the two, and reiterates the themes behind both bits. A motif that might not be so obvious on the first watch is the Welcome to the Internet chord progression. Obviously, you've probably heard it in the final chorus of Welcome to the Internet, but the same chords, E minor, A minor, G major, and B major, are also used in the interlude at the beginning of the special, when Burnham is setting up all the shots and we get to see a behind the scenes look.
Could I interest you in everything all of the time?
I think this choice was used by Burnham because at the beginning he's basically welcoming the audience to his special where he satirizes the internet. In a sense, he is welcoming us to the internet, or at least how he perceives it. The use of all these motifs is a great way to tie up the narrative of Inside in a neat bow. Well, as neat as it could be. I've always been a fan of musical motifs too in media. It just brings an extra element of emotion that can only be created through music. I've been sitting on this video for way too long at this point. You can probably tell by just how long my hair's gotten from the last part to now. Just so far I haven't talked about what I need to talk about. All of the points I've made don't really fully articulate how profoundly this special has resonated with me personally. I tend to cringe at the thought of centering myself in the videos I create. There's this kind of narcissistic warning signal that goes off in my head when I write things about my personal experiences, but for a thing as deeply self-aware as Bo Burnham's Inside, it almost begs its viewers to center themselves in the topics that Burnham discusses. And saying this in the least parasocial way possible, I can't help but to equate myself to Burnham, at least a little bit. Obviously, he has a wildly successful career that has spanned over a decade, and I'm a second-year film student, but at its core, the drive to be creative is shared between both of us, and I'm sure most of the world. When I haven't made something in a while, I get this nagging feeling that pushes me to create. It might not be that evident if you take a look at my upload schedule, but I assure you, it's there. To quell this feeling, I make some kind of art, whether it's music or videos like the one you're watching right now, but knowing that the end goal of these creative projects are most likely going to be outward facing, like music going on Spotify and videos going on YouTube, it makes me 10 times more self-critical. Knowing that there's going to be an audience that can scrutinize every frame of my work just compels me to rewatch and criticize myself to like an unhealthy degree. Basically making myself spiral into thinking this isn't your best work. But can you do any better? Are you just a terrible artist? Now, this isn't a feeling that is exclusive to me at all. Talk to anyone working in the creative field today and they would share a similar sentiment. Even the expression "you are your own worst critic" does exist to describe it. But a piece of media hasn't really articulated this feeling in such a real way for me. Until Inside. I think at its core, Inside is about this struggle, how creators will go so far to make sure that their art is good and the constant self-reflection that comes with it. The special is also very self-reflexive and aware of itself, mirroring an artist's self-conscious thoughts. The beginnings of these ideas are found in his earlier specials. Even in What, Burnham is aware of the artifice of his performance. He makes fun of how stand-up comedy is structured and how unrealistic these relatable stories comedians tell really are.
My father recently told me that I act too flamboyant on stage, and I said, "Really, Dad? Prove it!" He said, "What about that joke where you throw confetti at the end of it?" I said, "I haven't written that joke yet because it's based off this conversation." Gotcha!
Burnham is also really self-aware of the performance itself, to a point where he has to comment on even small mistakes, like struggling with a microphone stand.
Keep the struggle.
This culminates in the final song of the special, We Think We Know You, where three voices representing three people in Burnham's life are disingenuous and criticize him. It's also telling that the three people are all voiced by Burnham, insinuating that these aren't actually real people, but rather Burnham's own thoughts manifesting into them. In the end, Burnham takes these voices and turns them into a song, suggesting that he takes all of these criticisms and uses them as fuel to be creative. A quite optimistic view that he doesn't carry to later projects. Make Happy is even more self-critical and reflexive, especially even starting with a direct homage to What through costuming, sharing the same red pants and grey hoodie from the previous special. He once again is aware of the artifice of the performance and makes fun of the typical observational style of comedy.
This thing actually happened. Cool.
Burnham also extends this critique to pop musical performances by using exciting music to hype up the crowd, only to undercut the energy that he had just built.
1, 2, 3, 4. So I was at the dentist the other day. Yeah.
He is constantly aware of his own performance and is the first to criticize the form he participates in. Where Burnham articulated that his struggle with creating art in What was his own thoughts, in Make Happy he posits that the audience is the cause of these feelings. In the best song of the special, Can't Handle This, Burnham says in reference to the audience,
"The truth is my biggest problem's you. I want to please you, but I want to stay true to myself. I want to give you the night out that you deserve, but I want to say what I think and not care what you think about it."
This overthinking is exactly what art creation is about. Wanting to please an audience with your art, but not pander to them and make sure you're genuine, eventually leading to thoughts of inadequacy, outlining the artist's struggle. Also, a quick aside, both What and Make Happy haven't aged terribly well. Although most of his shows are often satirical, the use of slurs and insensitive topics can come off as just, well, kind of weird. And Burnham himself is aware of that and has since apologized and seems to have changed. So what I'm trying to say is, although I love these specials, they just have their problems and you should be aware of that. And this, finally, brings us to Inside, where Burnham hones these thoughts into the clearest representation of the struggle of creating art in his oeuvre. I've always wanted to use that word, it's just so pretentious. Unlike Burnham's other specials, Inside is structured around its own creation. Where What and Make Happy are just recordings of one night after months of work, Inside shows the performances as they're being made in chronological order, or at least it's presented in that way. You can tell because Burnham's beard and hair grows over the course of the special, this change being showcased terrifically in Goodbye, where a younger Bo is slowly faded over the top of an older Bo singing the same song, effectively having a duet with himself. Another aside, people have pointed out that in this last song, how could have Burnham lined up both the takes of his younger self and older self when they were recorded months apart? That must have been pretty tough, and wouldn't the song have changed over time? They suggest that the younger self part may have been recorded after the fact by simply cutting his hair, asserting that Burnham is not actually recording things chronologically, and to that I say, who cares? That's just nitpicking. It honestly doesn't matter what's actually real and what's fake. Burnham decided to tell a story about a comedian that is slowly spiraling while creating a comedy show. I don't care if it's supposed to be nighttime and you see light outside, I don't care if this is genuine frustration or not. What matters is the story being depicted on screen in a believable way, and I think he achieves that. Anyway, just a huge aside out of the way. In the special, Burnham takes this self-reflexivity that has been prevalent in his work to a literal degree, often watching his own performances in real time. Whether that be framed through an online format like reaction videos and streaming, or just Burnham literally watching himself on a projector, computer, or a well-placed whiteboard. Not even taking self-reflexivity literally, we get a peek behind the artifice with Burnham explicitly telling us about the structure of the special, and the two sequences of the film where we see test footage of the show itself. Over the course of the special, Burnham gets more and more frustrated as he works longer and longer on a project that feels like it won't end. This frustration first peeks its head at the end of the song Look Who's Inside Again, where Burnham is disappointed and dejected and decides to record another take. This sets the tone for the rest of the special, which is not as lighthearted as the first half. He becomes more physically violent, paralleling the frustration that comes with working on a big project for a long time, and the songs begin to reflect this. Whether it's That Funny Feeling, a folk song literally about depression, or Welcome to the Internet, an energetic yet negative show tune. We see as the artist's struggle gets more profound within Burnham, the art reflects that. The art is almost a personification of his mental state. Culminating in Burnham finally bearing his soul in a literal sense, him being naked with a spotlight pointed at him, the next scene then depicts Burnham struggling to get back into a room that he left, with an audience laughing at him, seemingly showing his inner fears of an audience judging him for showing such a personal side of himself. We then cut to Burnham looking at his own creation. After months of recording, watching, editing, frustration, self-loathing, a smile creeps across his face. It's done. He's happy. But it comes with a pinch of melancholy. How the scene is lit, there's almost a feeling of dread. A thing that he's put so much of his life force in is about to end. A thing that's been his crutch through a pandemic is finished. And that's scary. And that's what making art is about. Working on something that you are so passionate about that it feels like that it's a part of your soul, and then just letting it go. See other people's reactions and interpretations of it. Then hopefully you've learnt something, and then you start again. Whether you liked or disliked the special, you have to agree that it was insanely creative all throughout. How Burnham can manipulate such a small space is inspiring and impressive, and it's just a testament to how good of a comedian and filmmaker he really is. How he challenges the form, reflects on personal experiences, and takes inspiration from other pieces of media to make something wholly unique is just what I love in a piece of media. And that's why I'm going to give Bo Burnham's Inside a 10 out of 10. Now I better go before this video becomes feature length, because that could easily happen. Goodbye. Hello everyone, if you're hearing this, you've made it to the end, which is good job, honestly. It's tough, and I know, so thank you for sticking around this long. But just before I go, I want to acknowledge my patrons because that's something I should do. I just want to give a special thank you to my mother and Trinity Rose, and if you'd like to join them, head on over to patreon.com/Kane Midge. You get to see some behind the scenes content, some teasers for new videos, bloopers, and weekly updates, just extra content. But anyway, thanks for watching. Check out some of my other video essay stuff if you're interested in that, and if not, just leave. Thank you.